Okay, so hanging in here, waiting for snow to melt and so forth and so on. And what am I doing? Cruising around, trying to avoid any real work, obviously. And what do I see? But deGrasse Tyson is consciousness and
Nelson, and
illusion.
I'd love to teach you whatever you want to
This
know
is an
about
ad,
singing,
obviously.
piano,
So,
music theory, songwriting, or music production.
okay, great.
Dr. Tyson,
All right. So this looks like it's through conversations podcast. I don't really know this podcast or anything about it, but it just says consciousness. And you know me, I like consciousness. I also like Neil deGrasse Tyson, by the way. I don't always agree with everything he says, but I do like him. Personally, I think he's funny. I like his that Star Talk thing he does, which I've seen. I haven't seen a lot of it, but I've seen some of it. And I have his kid's book about being an astrophysicist. So I know sometimes he gets some pushback or whatever, but I think he's interesting. I'm seeing something over on the side over there. Anyway, I think he's interesting and has interesting things to say. But is consciousness an illusion? So let's find out. I don't know. Is Neil deGrasse Tyson an illusionist? That would be interesting to know. So let's listen to this.
in the beginning of the conversation, we discussed on consciousness and how the universe created us and we have consciousness in itself. We haven't even figured out what consciousness is. But do you believe that us being conscious, we're made of stardust, we're made of the galaxies, we're made of space. Do you think it's enough evidence that there's other conscious beings out there, or perhaps the universe itself has some form of consciousness?
I would say dogs are conscious, chimps are conscious, cats are conscious. I don't uniquely assign consciousness to humans. Uh, as a minimum, all mammals, because we're a mammal. All right. As a minimum, you can't tell me that when you look at a mouse curiously walking up to an entry to a maze, that they don't have consciousness. No,
I agree with that, obviously, but we could ask whether the kind of conscious experience they have is the same as we have. So when some people say, like I work with the guy Joe Ledoux, who said rest don't feel fear, and when I first heard him say that, I was quite surprised. But what he actually meant was like whatever kind of experience a rat has, it's not what we would call fear because they don't have the concept of fear, so they can't conceptually distinguish it in a way that we can. So I do think there is a now whether he's right or wrong about that, I don't know. I do think there's a tendency for people to assume that like the rat's experience will be just like ours, but like without some other complicated stuff. But I think it's an open question whether it would be just like ours or whether it'd be quite different than ours. But anyway, okay, so I agree so far. Good.
so uh, the consciousness might not even be special in the universe. There could be aliens with a much higher level of awareness of their world, such that our consciousness looks rather primitive to them. So I'm not invoking consciousness as a measure of anything special or important.
Much higher awareness of their environment. I wonder what he means by that. So if what he means is like different sensory capacities to discern this as well, the ability to see in ultraviolet light, sense electromagnetic radiation, etc. Is that what he means? Higher level? Make our form look primitive. They can only see in 3 dimensions. Maybe they have like a 10-dimensional experience or something like that. So I could see like that, but there still would be something it's like from their point of view, right? So what is this illusion stuff? Maybe this the clickbaity title, guys. I
I'm not compelled to do so.
don't know what that
Do you think
means.
we will ever figure out what consciousness really is?
Possibly, but just because we have a word for it doesn't mean it's a thing in need of being described. Okay? In that way. So, for example, maybe consciousness is not a real thing. It's some combination of other things that we haven't thought of yet. All right. What would be an example of that? So here we go. I'm gonna fund a mission to the moon to find out what kind of cheese it's made out of. Well, and I design an experiment. Is it cheddar cheese? Is it Roquefort cheese? Is it Edam cheese? And I have all these experiments to detect that. Then I send it to the moon, and it's not made of cheese at all. So my very assumption that it was made of cheese was itself flawed, and flawed all the experiments I invented to try to test for it. So because we can't even agree on what consciousness is, for me, is evidence that maybe it does not exist as in any way that we want it to or think it should. I just would leave that option open, because the history of science is one where if you think something is or should be a certain way, there's no obligation of nature to ensure that it is.
Well, that is true, obviously, but wait a second. So by leave, I mean, there's a sense in which I obviously agree with what he is saying. So if you and this is the illusionist view, right? That there's a certain way of conceiving it, talking about consciousnness that is going to make it an eternal mystery, and we're not going to ever find, like, is it a non-physical, subjective component of reality? Maybe there are no subjective components of reality. But on the other hand, so we might find out that we're thinking about consciousness in the wrong way, but we're not going to be ever convinced that we don't, that the consciousness is not there, huh? Or what? Or is he saying that we might even come to think of ourselves as, we might convince ourselves that we're zombies? Let me see what this guy's going to say. Hold on.
So no, I'm not. I don't lose sleep over consciousness.
This is for me personally, but in the future, let's say that we do find that consciousness is just not existent. We just defined it because we ourselves can perceive the perceiver. We can perceive that I am seeing you. I don't know, my body is...
And just to be clear, I'm not declaring it doesn't exist.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is, just because we have a word for it doesn't mean that word will yield to an explanation and an understanding that is based on objective reality. And it could be some other thing that we're knocking on the door of and don't even know yet.
Right, but just because we have a word, we have more than a word. We have a direct experience, one might think, kind of, sort of, there it isness. Just because we have a word. So this is generally an eliminativist kind. I mean, I get what he's saying. We might find out that it's very different. We've been thinking about the wrong way. So okay, but that doesn't... I guess that is a kind of illusion. Yeah, interesting.
So I just would stay open to that. And the evidence, as you correctly said, that we know hardly anything about consciousness, evidence for that is that people keep writing books about it. There's no books written every day about Newtonian gravity. We're done. The book is on the shelf. Right? So
That's not true.
Quite the opposite of what people might think. For every new book written on consciousness, it's further evidence that we know nothing about it.
Wow.
Dang, I kind of just wrote one too, so... But, I might get what he's saying, but I also don't get what he's saying. Every book written about it is showing we don't know about it, but we're trying to... So... But do we know that it's there? Yeah, see, their books are written about, do we know that it's there or not? I think everybody knows that it's there. The question is, like, what is it? Yeah. Okay. So he's saying we should be open to illusionism. Interesting.
Perhaps that's, perhaps it's not consciousness, perhaps it's the soul, or maybe it's not the soul, or maybe, but my fear is that maybe we do realize that everything is really mechanical. If we're mechanical, there's no special ingredient for us, there's no secret recipe, or we're not as special as the Krabby Patty from SpongeBob. There's no secret sauce. And perhaps AI will also reveal that in a way that we're just mechanical beings. And
Sure.
how do you...
I don't have a problem with that. So like, so what? That knowledge, it would be deep and insightful, but I'll still enjoy a nice meal with a good bottle of wine. I'll still enjoy friends. I'll still enjoy the sun on the beach. It doesn't change any of that.
I agree
Would
with
it
that.
change religion? Would
Possibly.
it change...
It depends on how tightly defined the religious understanding of the world is. Religions tend to have their own survival as a very high priority
Mhm.
in this world. So, in other words, is there some discovery that could be made where the Catholic Church says, "Oh, we've been wrong for 2,000 years. Close up shop. Sell the jewels and the books and whatever, and let's make the Vatican a playground, a theme park." No, I don't see that happening, no matter what. Right? So generally, what happens is that religions adapt to the new understanding of the world. You don't have religions declaring Earth is in the center of the known universe, whereas that was fundamental tenet
Mm.
before Copernicus. They don't. They would look silly doing so, for example.
Okay, interesting. So go check out this channel. There's obviously a link in the description. So interesting. Open to the idea of illusionism. So just because we have a word for something doesn't mean that thing needs to be out there for us to find. Interesting idea, but they didn't address this question about, well, there's consciousness, knowing what it's like. I mean, I don't lose sleep over that being some kind of physical thing either, but I don't think that means that it's an illusion either. So even though Neil doesn't like philosophers, he should talk to some so we could figure out what he really thinks, because I think he has interesting things to say. But generally, I think his attitude is don't let obsession with science, consciousness derail science in its investigation, which one could agree with, I guess. This is a longer interview. Might have to check it out. Okay, cool.